It says we're live. It says we're live. Hello, everyone. It's Tuesday. It's 4 o'clock Pacific, 5 o'clock here in Costa Rica, 7 o'clock on the East Coast. Our guest is from Charlotte, North Carolina, East Coast. 1 a.m. in Italy, 8:30 and 9:30 a.m. Wednesday morning in Australia, and it's Facebook Live. Hello, and welcome. Really glad to be back with you again. And Marzi and I send our love. She just blew me a kiss, and now she's going off to watch RuPaul. RuPaul, yeah, she's watching RuPaul. So she sends her love, and hello, everyone. It's nice to see you're out there. Send me a little thumbs up, a little Zoom thing, or, so that I know you're there. Here's Steph from Missouri. Thank you so much. And our guest today is my good friend, Seth Conger. Seth is the CEO of Mios Health. And we're going to talk a lot about that and what Mios is all about. And if you saw the announcement that we sent out that we're doing this today, I said that I'm really proud to be on the medical advisory board for Mios Health because I believe completely in what they're doing and that it is a tool that will change the world. So let me say hello, Seth, welcome.
Dr. Tom, thanks for having me. It's been too long since we've seen each other, obviously in person, but too long since we've done an interview like this. And I just for hosting me. This is gonna be a lot of fun.
Oh, this will be fun. And folks, as you have questions, just send them on over, and the team will make them available. We'll see them. Oh, Dorada's here from New York City. Hey, Dorada. You're listed as a top fan, and I think that's because you're here all the time. So thank you. Thank you so much for that. JC's in Pennsylvania, blew us a heart. Cindy's in Pennsylvania also. Hey, Cindy, top fan again. So nice to see you guys here. And I don't know why it is, and maybe one of you can send me some information on this. Last week, Facebook Live, and for the last few weeks, I'm trying to see the messages and the comments, and I can see maybe 10 comments, and I can't see the rest. And then when it's over, I look and there's 140 comments, and there are like 10 or 12 that showed up, and I don't know why. So there's something about that. So if I don't acknowledge you, it's not because I don't like where you're from, right? So Debbie's here from British Columbia, JC's in Pennsylvania, Cindy's also in Pennsylvania, Sherry's in Nebraska. So thank you all for being here. Thank you so much. And we'll answer your questions as you send them on over. But let's get started and let's just meet Seth. And Seth, I really don't like it when I'm on an interview and people say, so why did you get into the work that you do, Dr. Tom? But in this case, I think it's relevant as to how did Mios become a passion for you?
Well, let's say I fell into it, literally at about 60 miles an hour straight into a ski pole in downhill ski racing when I was 18 years old. And that happened twice my senior year. I was racing actually against Bodie Miller in high school. That was the level I was training at. Grew up in Maine on a farm, small town farm boy, grew my own food, all that stuff. And I had 3 head injuries in lacrosse that spring. And I was on the pre-med track because I had promised my grandfather I would help him with his health issues from the age of 6. And by the time I got to college, I couldn't comprehend what was going on in the textbooks in front of me. So I saw a psychologist and they told me I was homesick. And then I saw a medical doctor and they said, oh, well, all your test results are within the normal range, right? Which is this big. And finally, after struggling for a semester, I met with the dean of students and he told me I wasn't smart enough to be in pre-med. That dream was over. And I should probably study something easier if I wanted to stay in that school. And that his suggestion was business. And so as an impressionable 18-year-old, I said, okay, well, I'm gonna try hard and I'm gonna change this and I'm going to drop that path and move on to a different one. And interestingly enough, it was business that brought me back to functional medicine as a business consultant. And I started working with doctors because I could see so clearly what was missing in their operations of why they couldn't grow and scale. It wasn't the doctor's expertise. It was the model of care that they were working with. And when I got into functional medicine, somebody finally came up to me and said, hey, have you ever tested your brain function? And, for years, for well over a decade at this point, I had been hiding from any sort of cognitive issues. And so I took a pretty simple 30-minute brain function test. And it showed me that my processing speed was in the 20th percentile for my age group, for a 30-year-old.
Yeah.
And so how is that? And I started following the breadcrumbs, following the trails. And then I got into neurofeedback. And then I started working with some supplements. And then I started working with my gut. And then there was this, and then there was that. And all of a sudden I had a group of about 12 practitioners all over the place. And I felt like I was the person trying to keep all of them in the know of what was going on with me. And eventually I got better. And when I got better and my processing speed went up to the 99th percentile for my age group.
Same test.
Same test. Yeah. Same exact test 2 years later. I realized that there was something missing in this model. And I got very passionate about functional and integrative medicine and neurofeedback and all these tools and technologies at the time. I had lost both of my grandparents to dementia a few years before. My grandmother, the normal path, right? The diagnosis and the get your affairs in order and the expense of it and the draining of the bank accounts and the emotions and her personality. I can remember the day that my grandfather told us that she didn't remember who he was. And my grandfather, Jack, who was my hero, the same one that I promised when I was 6 that I would become a doctor to help him with his health issues, he saw the same signs himself. It was mild cognitive impairment, MCI. And he knew what that path looked like. So he ended up taking his own life. It was too late for me to help them.
He had seen what had happened to his wife.
He
said, I'm not going there.
Yeah. And he saw what it did to his kids and what it did to his grandkids. And he didn't want to go down that path. And I couldn't help my grandparents. But at the same time, I was working in an industry where I saw this glimmer of hope. This is before Dale Bredesen's research hit the web. This is before Dr. Isaacson was doing things at the Weill Cornell Alzheimer's Center, Alzheimer's Prevention Center. This is before, Max Lugavere's The Genius Foods and Genius Life. This is before you started publishing You Can Fix Your Brain. But I knew there was something there because it makes logical sense that if we work upstream, we can stop the problem before it turns into a problem. And I started seeing this firsthand working at an incredible clinical practice in Charlotte, North Carolina, but realized if we were going to stop this problem, we had to build a scalable model. And the problem was not doctor expertise. It was implementation. It was how do we take the experts and how do we layer on education and wearables and data and technology? How do we layer on health coaching into this? How do we flip the model on its head so that the incentives are aligned with the client and their goals rather than the insurance companies or the pharmaceutical groups? And that's what we set out to build. That's what you and I talked about 2 years ago, this dream that is now very much a reality. And we're now actually helping people.
I remember the breakfast that we sat in Scottsdale, Arizona, right? It was a great breakfast. Hi, Seth, nice to meet you.
Yeah.
And we started talking. And when I heard what you were doing, I said, you got to get this out in the world, man. And I'll help any way I can.
And you have. And
thanks. So as Seth is talking about, it's the implementation. For those of you that are thinking, well, what does that mean? And most of you have heard me talk in the past, or you've heard someone else talk about Dr. Dale Bredesen, the pioneer who wrote the book, The End of Alzheimer's. And he gave the analogy of an old factory, a 2-story factory. All the windows have been kicked out. There's gang graffiti on the walls on the inside. There's 36 holes in the roof. And so there's puddles on the floor. That's your brain with cognitive impairment. That's your brain. And you can't fix one hole. You've got to fix 36 holes in the example. Some people have 10 holes in their that need to be fixed. Some have 25, but you've got to fix all of it in order to stop all the puddles and the mess inside. when you want to give your brain power back, you've got to stop the drain that is occurring, which always comes from lifestyle.
Yes.
Not meaning the things that you choose to do, but meaning the things that you don't know you're doing that are causing holes in your roof.
That's right.
And so what MEOS is about, and Seth is going to talk about it a lot more, but I want you to understand about this idea of compliance is that it's really hard for you to read, oh, I should do this, and I should do this, and I should do this, and I should do this. Now that's just 5, but there's 36 possible. You know, there's a bunch of them. How in the heck can you possibly do an organized pattern to get your brain function back? How is it possible? And that's what MEOS Health is all about. So I'll pause there, Seth, and ask, do you want to add to that? Is there anything you want to say to adds on to that?
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple pieces in that, and one is how do you know, right? There's the fixing part, but then there's the identification, and that's where it gets extremely complicated the later and later that you leave it, right? If we all started this, just like investing in your retirement, if you start when you're 20, you can put $200 away every single month, and you're going to be in a really good place when you turn 65 and you start pulling out of that retirement account, unless it was March 12th of 2020 that you decided to retire. But outside of that, most people don't do that. They wait until they're 60 and say, I want this amount of money and this lifestyle when I turn 65. What do you mean I have to invest in my health at that point?
What does that mean? Yeah.
And so I think that we need to flip this model, and it really needs to be the proactive approach. The earlier you start, the less time, effort, and money it's going to cost to get to your optimal state of health, to be where you want to be in retirement for the rest of your life. The later you start, the harder you're going to have to work, the more money you're going to have to invest.
So let's talk about what mild cognitive impairment is. That's a lot of geek words. And then the stages. And prior to our starting here, turning this on, I said to Seth, I just saw an article that said 46% of people are not told by their doctors when they're diagnosed with Alzheimer's. They're not told.
No.
They're not. I went, what? What is that? What's that about? Well, first, a shout out. Sue O'Brien's here. Hi, Sue. Thank you so much for joining. Sue's an old friend from the very early days of the Institute for Functional Medicine, way back in the early 90s. And Sue was in Gig Harbor, Washington. She prepared the food that all of the doctors would eat on the breaks at the conferences. And it was the conferences when there were 30 of us. That was it. Now there's 300, 400 at a time, every time. But Sue's here. Hi, Sue. Nice to be here.
Hey, Sue.
Dwin says, I feel the same way watching my mother. I'm alone, so I don't want to be in a nursing home with horrible care. Well, thanks so much for commenting on that and for declaring that that's not what you want. I'm really glad you're here, and I hope that we give you some ideas today that help get you in the direction to make sure you're not in a nursing care home with horrible care. Janet's here from Michigan. Cindy's leaky brain and a little teary-eyed brain. Antoinette says from coastal Maine, hello. And the list goes on and on. Thank you all so much for being here. All right, so let's talk about these stages and how MEOS is focused on one stage.
Yeah. Well, Tom, I'm going to share a screen real quick because I think graphics usually help people. And if everybody can see this is just a little graphic we put together of the stages of pre-Alzheimer's. And this puts it in perspective for individuals. Dwayne, your comment and Tom, your response about declaring that you don't want to be in the nursing home, it's 100% right. It's a declaration, and really it's a decision, right? It's a decision that you make that you're not going to be there. And it's absolutely a possibility. Absolutely. We know how to lower the risk. We know how to prevent Alzheimer's disease, but it starts with a decision. So what this graph is showing is 4 stages. On the very far left, we have preclinical Alzheimer's disease. On the very far right, we have Alzheimer's disease. Now, we have a lot of confusing words and terminology here, and frankly, they keep changing it every few years that they come out with a new diagnostic and statistics manual that has all the codes and the things that the doctors need to tell you about what your disease label is. But right now, those labels aren't helping. What we have is pre-Alzheimer's. We have before Alzheimer's and we have Alzheimer's. And Alzheimer's, which is a form of dementia, it is the most prevalent form. It covers about 70% of the cases. That really means you've lost your independence. You can't follow instructions anymore. You can't get through day-to-day duties without somebody else helping you along. And prior to that, there's about 30 years of underlying conditions and imbalances and dysfunctions developing in your brain that is pushing your brain towards disease-driven cognitive decline and away from normal cognitive aging. Now, this group right here, these first three columns, is almost 50 million Americans.
Wow.
Almost 50 million. And you don't start feeling symptoms until subjective cognitive decline there in the middle. What that means is, hey, where are my keys? Where'd I put them? And you may spend 5 minutes tracing your steps from yesterday around your house and you find them on your bedside table. And that's not that out of the ordinary. So you think, yeah, maybe I'm just having a senior moment. This is totally normal. I got a lot of things on my mind. I'm stressed out. I'm going to forget my keys every once in a while. But the problem is no one else around you recognizes this. So people tend to just play it off at this point as this is just normal. Well, you get into mild cognitive impairment and your spouse says, honey, why are your keys in the refrigerator? And here everyone around you notices the decline. And you may go to the doctor's office. And finally, their pen and paper test is sensitive at this point to be able to understand that you're in a period of decline. But at this point, you have a lot of those holes in the roof, right? You have those underlying factors that are driving your decline. And we got to do a lot of work at this point to get you back, to reverse that disease. It's still very much possible. So our focus is in this area of mild cognitive impairment and subjective cognitive decline. We want to make sure that those 30 years from where are my keys to I don't know what keys are for, we don't ever get to that last point. And so this is an area that, Tom, it is so imperative that we have early detectors of cognitive decline. And you and I have had so many discussions on this. I think this is the key. I mean, if you're going to lose weight and you're going to join a program or do it yourself, what is the first thing that you do? Step on a scale. And the second thing you do is you probably set a goal of how much weight you want to lose in a certain period of time. And guess what doesn't happen in cognitive decline? No one steps on a scale and no one ever asks them what their goals are.
Well, people have heard me say this before. I'll say it now. I think it's really appropriate that everybody knows someone that had a heart attack and survived, and they change their diet and they start exercising and they look better than they've looked in years. Most of us know someone who was diagnosed with cancer and went through the recommended protocols, put in remission, and they feel great. No one knows anyone with a brain deterioration disease that's doing great. And it terrifies us so that we don't talk about it. We avoid it. So, well, I'm having a senior moment. No, well, okay, yeah, a lot of seniors have these moments, but it's not normal. It may be common, but it's not normal.
Right.
And so what Seth is talking about, and I've talked about it so many times, in every aspect, when you want to change the direction your health is going in, you have to know where you're at right now. What's the starting point? What are the biomarkers that you can use? And so many of you have ordered and done this test that we came up with, the smell test. And we'll talk about it in a little while, but this is just a biomarker, a really early marker that your memory centers are starting to have a problem. If that smell test comes back positive, right? So you want markers. You just want to see, all right, where am I right now? And as I've said so many times, when dealing with function, when patients come in, they say, I've been to Mayo Clinic and they don't know what's wrong. And I say, that's great. Congratulations. And they look at me a little strange, and they've heard I'm a little bit of a nutcase anyway, so that doesn't matter, right? But that means that you don't have a disease, because if you had a disease, Mayo Clinic would find it. You've got dysfunction.
Yeah.
So the tests we're going to do are functional tests to see what's not working right.
That's right.
And people say, oh, well, that kind of makes sense. And then the second visit, when they come back, everybody's nervous about test results. I mean, I'm nervous on my own test results when I do a test. Everybody's apprehensive. That's okay. That's normal, I think. But so they sit down and I say, I'm looking at tests. I say, well, good news. You're a mess. Look at this. This is off. It's going to take 3 months. This is off. It'll take a year. This is off. It'll take about 8 months. This should be done. It'll be better in 2 weeks. But look at all these things. These are great because all of these are fixable. And that's what you want with brain dysfunction, is to identify where are the holes in the roof, what's not working right. And then if it makes sense, you apply the principles to address and fix that hole in the roof.
And then you measure again.
And then you measure again.
And this is one of the biggest gaps that I've seen in the last decade that I've been working in this field, is the measuring again.
Yeah.
And that's why we don't have enough data to be pushing out. And it's why this is not the standard of care right now.
Yeah.
Because there's no incentive to measure a second time or a third time or a fourth time or do longitudinal measurement.
Right.
And what a saying that's been there forever is, what you can measure, you can manage. And, unfortunately, management is not what we want to do, right? We want to optimize. We want to reverse in many cases.
Right. But you don't know where to go unless you can see which holes in the roof need to be addressed.
Exactly.
You've got to see that. I'm going to do a shout out here. Liz is here from the UK. Nola's here from Australia. Tanya's here from Perth, Australia. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much. Dwynn made another comment. She said, my mom died last Saturday. Really sorry for your loss. Really sorry. And so glad that you're here right now and just listening to these ideas. And hopefully they might resonate with you and empower you to take a step forward, to not end up, as you said, in a nursing home with bad care. Yeah. Jacqueline said, listening from Montana, I literally just sang happy birthday to my best friend who was admitted into a memory care facility 10 days ago. I chose health. Thank you for sharing. Way to go, girl. That sounds like a Montana woman, so thank you so much. I used to have a place in the Bitterroot south of Missoula. I love Montana. It's a beautiful place. And Dorada's here and said to Dwynn, sorry to hear that about Dwynn. Dean says, any thoughts on the VCS test, indicative of environmental biotoxin exposure, which may be a part of this? Seth, do you want to address that?
Absolutely. We used VCS for a long time, and I think it's a part of the biomarker puzzle. I think that one of the things that we're trying to change is this approach of, I'm going to try this, and then in 6 months I'm going to try this, and then in 6 months I'm going to try this, and then in 6 months, and all the while you're declining.
Yeah, you don't have 2 years to try 4 things, one every 6 months.
If you're in mild cognitive impairment, we don't have a large window to work with it. And so we're not going to just do a single smell test. We're not going to do just a single VCS test. We're not going to do a single blood test for the basic markers that have been written about in books. We're going to look at every one of the risk factors that we know about. We're going to look at a lot of different factors that we have an hypothesis that may be driving some decline later. And we're going to put together a personalized plan for you to address all of those over the next 6 months, so you can put the power back or put yourself back in the driver's seat. Now, there's all sorts of different things that you can do if you're in that prevention stage. If you're way back in preclinical and you know that you have a couple risk factors, you can take more time. You have more time. And there's a lot of things you can do. I still think you should measure. I think that you need to have a cognitive baseline so that you have something to measure against if you do start seeing decline. Right. Because our brain is tricky, and Tom, you know this. We're not We're not wired for understanding if our brain's declining. We're wired for survival. Our brain is going to trick us into believing that everything is okay. And if you don't have an objective measurement, most people don't understand if they're declining or not. You know, what's so interesting is that memory is the first subjective item that we see people coming up with, subjective complaint. I'm forgetting my keys. I've lost words here and there. I don't remember the name of a close friend. It's the last objective thing that we see when we do our early cognitive testing.
Right.
What we see far upstream of memory declining is processing speed, right? The speed of your brain, how fast things are moving, decision-making and attention, planning and organization, your frontal lobe activity, right? So it's the back of your brain and the government of your whole brain. It's the frontal lobes and your CEO of your brain. Your brain's not going to tell you if you're making poor decisions or not. That goes against your survival. But these are things that we can measure, and we can see the earliest changes, just like the smell test, that show us that something is off and we need to dive deeper. And depending on how much is off, it shows us how much deeper we need to dive. But it's about that measurement that is so important.
Critically important.
Yeah.
A shout out to Samantha that's here from Brisbane, Australia. Brian's from Leduc, Canada. Allison asks, is there an age or stage that is too late to stop the progression of Alzheimer's?
We have not seen sustainable success with people who have a type of a dementia diagnosis. So that would be Alzheimer's disease, Lewy bodies, even Parkinson's, ALS, the other neurodegenerative diseases. And there has been success. There have been case studies. There have absolutely been people who have seen success in this. Mm-hmm. Our job at MEOS is to get sustainable success and create programs around things that we can scale to lots of people. Yeah. And we have decided not to work with individuals who are diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease or another form of dementia because of that reason. We want to give people their life back rather than see some incremental improvements, but there's absolutely places that we refer to that do see improvements in those later stages, and we're happy to make those referrals.
One of the keys that we're going to talk about is how do we ensure that people that are working with MEOS are able to implement the recommendations. Mm-hmm. Seth, can we go to that topic, and what makes it different when there's 10 things that have to be addressed at once because you don't have 6 months to try one thing and then 6 months for the next thing? How do we help to ensure people being successful in implementing this?
Absolutely. So Tom, I'm going to share again, get those graphics up there. So what we see and what has been commonplace is that people do their own research. They have some symptoms, or their spouse has some symptoms, or a loved one does. And then they go to their primary care provider or neurologist and they're told to wait, right? The symptoms aren't bad enough, so they got to wait for 6 months and come back. Or they're told to get their affairs in order, or they're told, we're just going to manage and monitor this. So they do their own research, and there's a lot out there. And they find out that there's literally hundreds of things that they must do. And they don't know where to start. They don't know how to do these things. They don't know where to look. They may find a great practitioner who's a specialist in one area, but doesn't have the ability to do other areas. And it may not be right for them. So what we decided to do is we decided to build the back end of that model. We wanted to build the implementation. What that implementation is a program. So it's first identifying the earliest drivers of decline, using things like the smell test, using things like a objective cognitive screening, and even questionnaires. And then from there, it is doing the labs. It is doing the comprehensive data dump using wearables, things like the Oura Ring and smart scales and heart rate monitors. This great data that we now have a grip on, using that and continuous glucose monitors to drive what is actually going on with this person in a real life scenario. not just from a blood test.
Let's take one example. Let's take two examples. Let's use the continual glucose monitor and the Oura Ring to explain what those are to people.
So a continuous glucose monitor goes on the back of your arm. The one we use lasts for 2 weeks, and you scan it with your phone. The information goes directly into our app, and we measure the overnight, your glucose range, and then and glucose variability. And we also measure after meals. So sometimes people have a meal that they think is perfectly healthy, and it spikes their glucose up. And if it spikes their glucose up, then their brain is not getting the energy that it needs, and their body is reacting the wrong way to that type of food. You do that over and over again, and you're going to have an energy utilization problem.
So for those that don't know, glucose means blood sugar. And every time we eat, we affect our blood sugar, hopefully in a beneficial way. But you may be eating a really healthy organic meal that makes your blood sugar go through the roof. And if it goes through the roof because of how you lived your life or some things in the past, I grew up on Mountain Dew and Three Musketeers. I don't know about you, but my blood sugar was yo-yo for a long time. Mm-hmm. So if your blood sugar is doing this yo-yo thing during the day, every day, when it goes high, you get more inflammation in your brain. And inflammation kills brain cells.
Right.
And if it's low, you get low blood sugar, you get more inflammation in your brain. And inflammation kills brain cells, but you'll never know because you're eating an organic meal.
Yep.
That's why wearing this patch, which is like a nicotine patch, and your phone just reads the information. It's so cool. It's just so cool because you're seeing on a daily basis, every single day, what is your lifestyle doing in terms of supporting the environment of the brain to giving you the fuel that you need, the blood sugar, or is it aggravating and killing off more brain cells?
Yes.
That's such a cool little device that is just one piece of the puzzle. Now, what about the ring, Seth?
Yeah, so we take that, and again, what you said is that alone can drive some significant decision-making in your overall nutrition and lifestyle.
Right.
But you take that data and you layer it on top of an Oura ring, and you can see it here on my finger that I'm wearing one. And this ring, what we use it for is heart rate variability. So your stress response and resilience, and most importantly, your sleep. So we are looking at your sleep quality and your quantity. And we're overlaying this data on top of what you're eating and how your glucose is responding to it. So we get to see what you're eating, how it affects how you sleep. And how you sleep affects your cognitive skills and your cognitive scores. And then how that feedback loop goes back in. And that's just a fraction of the data that we're picking up without our clients doing anything other than wearing a ring that doesn't need to be charged for 5 days or scanning a patch on the back, because we've built the app or what we call a client engagement platform. We had to build a platform for all of this because no one thought we should string all these things together. Why should we be looking at blood sugar and sleep at the same time? And why should we be giving that data to a health coach to empower them to help drive that individual's lifestyle to allow them to make easier, more sustainable choices? And why should we be collecting all of this and comparing two people's data next to each other and seeing how that increases their brain function over time through a program? And we said, because that's the only way we're going to actually make an impact on this disease. That's the only way we're going to create new standards of care, is by building a new system.
As you talk about this, I just get so excited because there is nothing like this out there in the world at all. Absolutely nowhere. And we've just talked about two little things, a blood sugar patch, like a nicotine patch, and a ring. Yeah. But Seth made a comment there that I think is such a critical component of this whole platform that Meals has built. And Seth, I'd like you to talk about health coach. And what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so a health coach is a specially trained individual who is going to guide all of our clients, or you, I'm talking to the listeners here, is going to help guide you through all the necessary changes that you need to make over a period of time. They are there to be your accountability partner. They are there to be your confidant. They are there in every single meeting that you have with your doctor to be your ally, to make sure that there's a second set of ears there to make sure that you're not missing anything in translation. And so that everything is implemented the way it needs to be. They are that perfect intermediary that allows you to make the necessary changes, not just to get healthier now, but to be sustainable afterwards. Dr. Tom, we only work with people for 6 months. We have 6-month programs. Now there's an assessment piece before that, can last anywhere from 4 weeks to 8 weeks, depending on the level of that. But after 6 months, we don't want to be working with people anymore. We don't think that they need our level of care.
Right.
What happens is these habits have been ingrained because we take our time with it. We use a structure called Tiny Habits that's come out of Stanford. BJ Fogg, he actually just came out with a book this past January, and we developed our curriculum around that to make sustainable change so that when people are done with a comprehensive program, they can manage their continual improvement and they keep the wearables. So we still continue to test their brain function. They get to see their sleep. They know what's going on with their body fat and their visceral fat. They understand what's happening in their body. And so they are acutely aware if something starts slipping, and they know why. And we can always jump in if we need to, if it starts slipping too much, but they don't have to keep paying forever.
Right. That's one of the critical components that makes MEOS different, is that you've got a health coach who's your advocate. And excuse me, I don't mean to be chauvinistic, but you've got a wife for your brain, you know, that's there to feed you and take care of you and be a partner with you, who's going to ask the questions. Because when you're sitting on your conference call with the doctor, they're sitting there with you and they're asking questions, knowing that in the last discussion you guys had, you were concerned about this. And when you're talking to the doctor, you might be nervous. You know, you might not remember everything you want to say. You've got your coach right there with you. And then when the session is over, you and your coach review what was said and, okay, let's implement this. How do you think we should do it? You're getting trained on how to change the lifestyle habits that got you to where you are right now with the number of holes in your roof. And the lifestyle habits that you have, you didn't know they were causing holes in your roof. You didn't know.
Right.
But now you're learning what they are and you're learning how to turn them around. That I'm so proud to be a part of this, because there's nothing like this out there. You know, people, there are a bunch of questions that came in asking about different tests. Well, is this a good test? As Seth said, there's no one test that's going to turn around the, you know, if the boulder's going downhill, there's no one test or one thing you're going to do that's going to turn it around, right? We have to shift the entire platform of how you're living your life right now. And that's a primary goal of MEOS, as I'll say this, is to identify how are you throwing gasoline on the fire and teach you how to live differently so you don't throw gasoline on the fire in your brain any longer.
Tom, let me make a comment on the tests. I think this is important for your community to understand. So we have the primary care doctor who's going to run, you know, anywhere in the neighborhood of 7 to 11 different blood tests on you on an annual basis.
Right.
And then they're going to spend 7 minutes with you. That's the allotment of time. Now, an integrative functional practitioner is probably going to spend an hour with you, and they're going to order some functional labs. Now, those labs, they have to order each one of them separately. They have to treat those kits differently. They have to send them off to different places. When they come back, they usually come back in PDF format. Maybe they get dropped in their electronic medical record. Maybe they're faxed back. And as the doctor starts looking at that data, they have more and more pieces of paper that they have to see that are not actually correlated with one another for that person. So there is a disincentive for the functional medicine doctor to order all of the lab work, because they end up with, and this is crazy, our general lab panel that we do in our Enhance Your Future program, which is for people with subjective cognitive decline, we look at over 1,000 biomarkers from 9 different laboratories.
That's no exaggeration.
And so what we do is, and we did this because we did this in the beginning. So we ordered all those tests and we laid out the PDFs, and it covered a 20 by 20 foot area of paper. And it was 300 pages of data. So how does the doctor who's spending an hour with you, how much time do they have to spend on the back end just organizing pages of data to get what they need to create the plan for you? So we solved that problem by bringing everything in. Mark, my co-founder, Mark Osborne, built this incredible technology solution behind the scenes that takes all of this data, layers it into a report that breaks things down by system. And most importantly, it breaks things down by your drivers of decline and then your roadmap to the results that you want. So the first question we always ask is, what are your goals? If we don't know your goals, how are we going to get you there? But once we have your goals and we have your drivers of decline, we can easily create that roadmap to results. And then your doctor and your coach and other lifestyle experts that we have either in our network or on our team help guide you to get there, so you're not on an island by yourself trying to do all these things. And if your primary care provider is interested in what you're doing, we give them a co-pilot seat in the app. And they sit on the app and they get to see everything as it progresses. You get to see your brain function increase, and you get to see your sleep data, and you get to see your continuous glucose monitor data. All of these things are available to you because it empowers people to continue to get better.
Yeah, and we want to empower your doctors to learn about this,
Yes.
so that they can be more comprehensive in their care for their other patients.
Yes.
So you're always welcome to have your doctor sit in and listen and observe of the reports we're giving and how the coaches are guiding you to the next step.
That's
Critically
right.
important concepts.
Yeah. Who's commenting?
Let's see. Cindy says, I know this is not necessarily within your field, but can chronic inflammation and heavy metals and chemicals from 43-year-old breast implants cause memory issues and thought processes? Short-term memory is awful. Recently explanted and doing some detoxing and hoping to get better in time. Really great question, Cindy.
It is.
Really.
Yeah. So chronic inflammation, I'm going to put those in two buckets: chronic inflammation and toxins. All right. We know that chronic inflammation is one of the biggest root causes of this disease and every other chronic disease that's out there. So yes, chronic inflammation is going to drive cognitive decline. Toxins are a huge part of this, but again, not any one thing is enough to cause cognitive decline. My head injuries, what I found out later, the reason those head injuries affected me so much and not the other people who were skiing and crashing was because I had gut dysfunction. So as soon as I had the head injuries, it triggered the gut dysfunction. That flipped my HPA axis and my hormonal signaling, and my testosterone went down to 200 as a 20-year-old. That's not where it's supposed to be.
That's not where it's supposed to be.
That's what can happen when your system is out of balance. Now, I didn't know any of that. So it's really about, and I like to use the bathtub analogy, right? Is your bathtub full up with water, or is that water spilling over the edge? Because toxins, like a mold or a heavy metal, could be a basketball that drops into that bathtub right when that water is about to be displaced, right at that very top. And it can send everything over the edge. But removing just those toxins may not fix the whole problem. So again, it's a comprehensive solution.
There's no question. I'm just going to change one word that you said. You said it may not, if you get rid of that toxin, like in Cindy's question, she said heavy metals. So she suspects, or maybe she's tested for heavy metals, and she's hoping, all right, if I get rid of heavy metals, am I going to get better? And the answer is probably not. Right. Probably a little bit, maybe a little bit, but all right, I'm going to do this. I'll take 6 months to do this. And then I'll check and I'll take 6 months to do this. And we don't have those, as Seth, you said that so well, we don't have those 6-month windows. You have to dress the whole bathtub. And what's in the bathtub that's overflowing, not just the basketball that fell in and took it over the edge.
That's right.
Critically important concept for people to understand. You want to change the direction of brain deterioration.
Yes.
And that's what my book is about. For those of you that have read the book, You Can Fix Your Brain. You know that. And it's overwhelming to read the book because there's this, and there's this, and there's this, and there's this, and there's this. And that's why The subtitle of the book is just 1 hour a week to the best memory, productivity, and sleep you've ever had, because the goal here is every week you deal with one more thing. Every week you deal with phthalates from plastic storage containers in the kitchen. The next week you deal with hormone levels and you get a hormone test done. Then, and it's the only way in the book that I can talk to each individual person of a successful way, or increasing the likelihood of success, is by Marzi just walked by the window and did one of these to me, right in the middle of my line of thinking. So in the book, it's 1 hour a week because you're on your own. But what excites me so much and why I'm part of MEOS, they're doing the whole book at one time with you. They put the programs together, the software programs that have never been done before, that take over 1,000 markers into one software program, so that the doctor and the health coaches can look at this, and you're wearing the ring, you're wearing the thing, the patch, you're being monitored daily, and so that they're taking, how is she responding to this, and how is she responding to that, and how's this going, while they've got the big picture. There's never been anything like this before. That's why I'm so excited about it and excited to be a part of it, is because of that.
Thank you. Dr. Tom, I saw a comment in here that I want to address.
Sure.
Cindy Foley said that her sleeping issues are an issue. And this is when your brain has a chance to repair itself. We see this in 80% of the individuals that we speak with. So the first step with MEOS is a free 30-minute phone call. We call it a discovery call with one of our brain health advisors. We call them brain health advisors because it's like a financial advisor. We have a fiduciary responsibility to get you moving in the right direction towards your goals. If that's with us, that's fantastic. If it's with somebody in our network that's going to be a better fit with you, just as good. We measure success as a company by getting people to their desired results. That's it. So sleep happens to be a problem for 80% of the people that we talk with. And over time, their brain is not repairing itself. There's a phenomenal book out there, Matthew Walker's Why We Sleep, and there's a lot of Alzheimer's research that he works with in that book and has since in many interviews. And on cognitive tests, if you're missing 1 to 2 hours of sleep, you could score 20% less on cognitive tests. And people do that for years. Their brain is not repairing. And so all this stuff is just building up in their brain. We don't have a lymphatic system in our brain. We have a glymphatic system. The lymphatic clears out all the junk and the toxins down here below the shoulders. So sleep is so important. Absolutely key.
The only time, and by the way, that's an excellent book. I referenced it in You Can Fix Your Brain.
Yes.
The only time our brain regenerates is when you are in a parasympathetic dominant state. That's the only time. And we all live in such a stressful world that the only time we get a chance to be in a parasympathetic dominant state is when we're sleeping. Or if you're on the 10th day of a 2-week vacation with no kids. That's another time you can be in parasympathetic down, where you're just mellow and laid back. But reality check, most of us are in sympathetic dominance all day long, every day. So there's no healing going on. It can't.
Yep.
It can't. And the only time you can heal is when you sleep. But if your sleep is compromised, you don't heal.
That's right.
And as Seth said, you can lose 20% by just missing an hour a night, an hour to 2 hours a night, and you lose 20% of your cognitive function. So it's that's why you're wearing the ring, is that we're monitoring you every night.
I want to know.
Yeah.
And Dr. Tom, Jerry made a comment too that I think is it's different than anything we've talked about so far, and probably different than anything anybody wants to approach. And this is the insurance piece. Jerry asked if this program is covered by Medicare. And Jerry, the answer is no. But I want to ask you a question, Jerry, and everybody. I want you to think a little bit different, because when we created MEOS, it was about how do we change the entire system so the incentive is for the client and their results rather than anything else. And I want you to think about every other insurance that you have, that you're required to have or you choose to have. You have automobile insurance, you probably have life insurance, you may have renter's insurance or homeowner's insurance. Are they there to improve those things that you own? Or are they there in case of disaster? And the answer is all of those insurances are there in case of disaster. And guess what? If you get hit by a car tomorrow, you are really happy that you live in the United States, potentially, or wherever you are in the world. You're really happy that you have insurance, right? Because that insurance for disaster and the ER systems, that's what all of our medical systems across the world are built for: acute care, not chronic disease reversal. So you can't walk into an auto mechanic with your auto insurance card and ask for an oil change. It's not going to happen. So if you want to improve your health, and if you want to live your life the way you want to be, and you want to live your best health throughout the remainder of your years, you're going to have to invest in your health. And it's not just money, it's time, it's effort, and it's some money that you're going to have to invest in order to keep yourself healthy.
And you did a reality check with me. I don't know that you knew that you were doing that, but when our first breakfast we had together, when you told me the numbers of what happens to someone when they've got cognitive decline and when they eventually get diagnosed with Alzheimer's, can you share some of those numbers?
Yeah, so Alzheimer's disease costs an average of $365,000 per person. That does not count nursing homes, living situations, or food. It also doesn't count unpaid caregiver time, which is estimated at about $280,000 per person. And the minimum is 20% of that is going to be out of pocket. So even if a lot of that is covered by Medicare, 20% of that is still out of pocket. And Tom, that's well over $70,000 that someone's going to pay just to continue to decline. Yeah. So why not invest a tenth of that now to avoid that problem down the road?
Yeah, yeah. What do you do when you want to buy a new car? You kind of look at some of the ratings on the car, you take it for a test drive, you kind of experience the car, and then you put down your money to buy a new car, right? You have to do that with your brain and how you're going to address this topic. If you're on this Facebook Live, you want to know more information about your brain. And if you want to know more information about your brain, you want to look at what's out there in terms of the programs. And if what we're talking about here makes sense to you, that you don't have 6 months to try N-acetylcysteine, or let's get the heavy metals out. That'll take 2-3 months. And then, okay, I'll check and see after that if I'm better. You don't have those kinds of blocks of time when you're already noticing that there's brain dysfunction. You don't have those blocks of time. So you want a comprehensive big picture. If you don't do anything after today, except understand that you need a big picture plan here, a game plan, and you start looking for big picture game plans, that may be the greatest benefit that you get out of being here today, is that you understand I know of 2, there may be more, but why have pharmaceutical companies shut down their Alzheimer's research departments and laid off the researchers? Because they've spent billions, literally billions, and they're never going to find a cure for Alzheimer's because there can't be one. There's 36 holes in the roof that Dr. Bredesen identified, and there's more. There's more than that. So
there's a tremendous amount of research coming out now. Dr. Bredesen has just sprung this amazing amount of other talented researchers and clinicians that are now doing their own research. And much of that is around lifestyle. There's currently 100 clinical trials that are sponsored by the National Institutes of Aging on lifestyle and Alzheimer's disease.
Marvelous. And
an article just came out in Neurology, a massive, massive journal, one of the most respected journals in the world, a prospective study or an observational study just in July showing that if you are on top of your lifestyle, if you're doing 4 out of 5 things or 5 out of 5 things, and those are nutrition, exercise, cognitive exercise, not smoking, not drinking too much alcohol, basic lifestyle choices. If you've been doing all 5 out of 5, you can lower your risk of Alzheimer's disease by 60%. If you're doing 60. If you're doing 3 out of 5, you can lower it by 35%. That's a doubling. Now, that's not even looking at sleep or stress or having a purpose or challenge or all of the underlying other risk factors that we know about.
Right.
This is so possible, but you have to start with understanding. Where are you? Where do you stand?
We've got just a few minutes left, so let's tell people what they can do. What's the next step here?
So the next step for us always is we like to have a conversation. So we believe that it's in our best interest and your best interest to get to know each other. And so we have brain health advisors, and we want to spend 30 minutes with you. Bring your questions. We will spend 30 minutes, and that time is for you to get all your questions answered. And whether it makes sense from that point to move forward with us and do a cognitive baseline, then great. And if not, then we've had a wonderful conversation. We want to get to know people, and we believe that education is so empowering. And so we've seen Facebook comments from people we've just had single calls with. And so we're going to put up a link in the Facebook Live, and we're going to send it out to everybody. It's mioshealth.com/start-today. You'll take a really quick 2-minute questionnaire because we want to know who you are, where you're from, what's going on. And then you have your chance to book a call with me or one of our other brain health advisors. Sometimes I take some of those calls, so you may get surprised and see my name pop up there. I like to be on the front lines. And after that, we like to measure. And so, Tom, this is something special that we're going to be doing for your community. Anybody who comes through this, and there's going to be a question on that questionnaire of where'd you hear from us? So please say Dr. Tom on there. It'll be a drop-down menu to choose from. And those people who decide to go forward with a cognitive baseline, which is measuring their cognitive function objectively, subjectively, we do this all through our app. So it's a really easy process. It takes about 30 minutes. We have your spouse or your partner get involved with this too. So we have 2 different perspectives. And what we're doing different, normally that's $97. It comes with an hour-long review. So we actually sit down and review your cognitive test scores for an hour and give you a plan to move forward with at that point. That's $97. But what we're going to do, because of our partnership with you, Tom, is anybody who purchases that, we're going to mail them a smell test because it's another indicator of early cognitive decline. That's right. So we're going to actually mail you a smell test. Tom has recorded some great videos to actually go through the interpretation of this. We have all of the literature backed by it, and we're going to talk about it in the overview too, in that 1-hour brain health advisor meeting to review your cognitive baseline. This is about empowerment. I believe everybody over the age of 40 should be doing this. Even if you're feeling fantastic, get a cognitive baseline. You may be surprised that there's one area you need to improve, and we may be able to point you in the direction of what normally leads to that. Because we have all this data showing us what happens with lower processing speed. What's usually the case in that situation? What about short-term memory versus episodic memory versus visuospatial memory? So that's what we want to do for everybody. We're going to put that link out on Facebook Live. It's going to be in the chat.
It's posted already in the chat room.
Great.
So it's there. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, the smell test is $47. Normally it's $47. So that's great. Thank you for doing that. I'm so proud of this test that we put together.
Thank you for the partnership and the advising and helping me come up with the idea and blossoming this 2 years ago. I'm so excited that we get to share this with your community now.
And I
first big community we've shared it with.
I want to thank you, Seth, and I want to hear everyone's experience of it. So you write to me at info@theDr.com. You write to me after you've done this and tell me what you think. I really want to know because I'm on the medical advisory board, so I want to make sure that we're crossing our T's and dotting our I's, which I believe we are. But you guys are the consumers, so let me know so I can help Meals be better at what they're doing.
And Dr. Tom, I will say, so some people are going to run into a couple things on the questionnaire. Right now, just because of the limited space that we have, this is open to people in the United States right now. We will be sending this out in just a couple months to people in all countries to take the cognitive baseline. We just have a limited availability right now for our time and for our staff. And so I don't want people to get angry if they get in there and say, well, wait a second, I'm not in the United States, and so I can't do this. Right. We will be sending out a different link to individuals in different countries in just a couple months. It's just, we don't want to be getting further down the line and then telling people, oh, we can't help you because of country jurisdiction right now.
Right. Thanks for that, Seth. And as soon as that's available, I will be announcing it on Facebook Lives.
Excellent.
So that wherever you are in the world, you'll be able to get this.
Yes.
All right. Well, it's time. It's that time. It just goes so fast every week. It really
Talk
does.
for hours.
I know. It's a critically important concept. And
breakfast hasn't even been served yet, Tom. We've got plenty of time.
I know. Well, Seth, thank you so much for being here today, and thank you for your passion. And I'm kind of glad that Bodhi won and you came in this direction. You're right, because now tens of thousands are going to be helped. And for those of you that don't know, Meals also has the plan to train physicians all over the world about this. That's why we want your docs to be on these calls when you're doing the calls in the program, so that more doctors can do this all over the world. Because this is, I believe, the way to arrest and reverse the direction that your brain deterioration is going in if we catch it early enough. That's the key. That's the key. So with that, I'll say thank you all so very much for being here. We'll see you next week. Seth, thank you again.
Thanks, Dr. Tom.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.